Y'all get up in here. Get up in here because we got some things to talk about. I need folks to unplug the mics. It's getting ridiculous. Unplug the mics. Okay. Now, if you're new here, I'm Denise Brady. I'm a licensed marriage family therapist, and I got beef. I got beef with AD and a lot of y'all other people who are calling yourself podcasters now. Most recently, Marshall was on her podcast. Where's journalism at these days? Did we just throw it out the window once Amazon said all you need to do is pay for Prime and you can have a podcast in 2 days? Okay. She sucks at interviewing. Now, Marshall was on her podcast along with Sandy, giving us life updates. Okay. Is anyone still checking for Sandy? I don't think so. Quiet as kept, Marshall too. Okay. But the conversation was what he said was what a lot of people are feeling in life. Okay. But the thing that upsets me about these podcasts, why are y'all on podcast instead of in therapy? And then you'll have people who have no psychological background, no informed care, no trauma focus, having guests come on with no trigger warning. Was there a trigger warning for this episode? No. I'm going to give y'all one because I'm a professional. So trigger warning as we go into this conversation with Marshall and the things that he talked about. Y'all, everybody don't need a podcast. It's saturated. Some of you are not trained to know how to deal with, ask questions, and just a period. 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 That is what her response is to a lot of questions and just the riveting conversation. Was it riveting? But Marshall went on here and gave us some life updates, and he opened up and was vulnerable and transparent about some things a lot of people are facing. And that conversation was about not being here, having thoughts about not being here, being curious about not being here, but then having a plan. Okay, because there are a lot of nuanced conversations when it comes to talking about unaliving, not being here. But so many people are afraid to talk about it because they're afraid of, oh, it'll make people think that they can do it. I'm too scared, it's too taboo. We have to talk about it. We have to talk about it if we want the stigma to break, if we want people to reach out for more help, if we want people to recognize that there are resources. And so I was, scrolling on TikTok. I know I'm not going to play the whole thing because copyright. Okay, but let's go on over to TikTok and hear what he said. And let's have a conversation about suicide awareness. Luckily, this video does have a trigger warning. Because once again, trigger warning, y'all, trigger warning. We're going to have a very good conversation here just about having this discussion, the right people having these discussions, trauma-informed care, and podcasts should not be therapy sessions. Okay, so let's get into it. Why don't we?
The truth was, last year was just very tough for me mentally, and I was going to take my own life. And it just got to a point where, I had always been morbidly curious, but never thought about how to do it. And then one day, I'm just down in the dumps, just crazy depressed. Nothing is going right for me in my life, or I feel like nothing's going right. That's what my internal monologue is telling me. And those voices, that darkness, just got a little bit louder, got a little bit darker. And I felt like I was in this box, and I could turn right, left, up, down, wherever. And it just felt like the walls were just getting closer and closer and closer, and nothing, no favorite meal, no favorite movie, no favorite song could lift me out of that. And I knew I had a problem when I was okay with this particular time that I talked to my mom. I was okay with that being the last time I talked to her. And I was like, okay, all right, yeah. this is bad. I talk to my mom every day, multiple times throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I was okay with that being the last time.
Yeah.
And so I was gonna do what I felt like I had to do, but I couldn't. And at that moment, I decided to just I had to remove myself from that current environment. And I'll never forget this. I will never forget this. Seattle is a very rainy city, and this is at peak rain season. And I lived on a very busy street in downtown Seattle. And you could, at any time of the day, there's buses, cars, bikes, people walking. Nobody was out there. No cars, no buses, no bikes, no people, nothing. And I'm walking in the rain. I had on like a cutoff t-shirt and basketball shorts and a pair of slides. And I'm just walking. And then I walked around the Space Needle, came around back to my apartment, and I'm like, I want to live.
Now, I think it's really important to have this conversation because more and more we're talking about, I think we're talking about it, but are people listening? Because according to studies, 40% of people who die by suicide visit a health professional before their death, 1 month before, underscoring the critical role of how healthcare in settings can cause prevention. We can have prevention. But I think this was not the host. This was not the conversation for this type of environment. I love that he's transparent. I love talking about this stuff because there's so many people who are suffering in silence, but AD is not the one. When he first said, when he first went to the conversation, where was let's pause for a second. Are you okay with having this conversation here? Were there support systems around and said that, period. Not only that, but she has a huge audience. To have such a huge audience and no trigger warning, to help people who are watching this who have had similar thoughts, feelings, currently having similar thoughts and feelings, I think is irresponsible. I think it's truly irresponsible. And over the last couple podcast episodes, I feel like AD has been getting a lot of backlash, and it's only getting worse. Because how do you have a conversation like this without any, to me, real response of thank you for sharing that? But maybe that's me as a therapist. Maybe I expect too much from people. Okay? Maybe I should just get in line with the watered down, not really caring, not, putting a trigger warning, not really thinking about other people watching this, and just focus on what the views. Skip that part of the podcast, skip that conversation. But so many people are in a state of mind where they are having those thoughts. And I think suicide is very nuanced. And there are so many people who are experiencing those same thoughts and shame. Their baseline is to have those kind of thoughts every day. And it doesn't actually mean that they have a plan. It does not mean that they actually want to go through with it. It just means that I have those thoughts. And I've heard so many people say, like, I'm afraid to tell my provider. I have those thoughts because I don't want to go to grippy sock vacation. I don't want to be got locked up. And clients who also have trauma from telling therapists that they were just having thoughts, no plan, no intention, and got locked up or sent away. So there's people who have that trauma too. So as a therapist, it's so important to create space and dialogue, to have these conversations. And I see more and more podcasts that are creating these conversations and dialogue without training, without knowing the statistics, without knowing the facts, without recognizing somebody in my audience can be a Marshall. And in some ways it can be like, oh, okay, Marshall had these thoughts. I'm not alone. I thought about the same thing, having the conversation, that last conversation with my mom or dad and being okay with it, or my whatever family member. But there's just a lack, to me, of responsibility. A lack of just like, do I have high expectations? Do I have high expectations? Too high? Okay. Maybe it's that. But every day there's somebody, more than one person, someone you might know, okay, who's having these thoughts, feelings, but I don't want to reach out for help because I'm a burden. My homegirl problems are bigger than mine, so I'm not going to put the weight of my ish on her. And there's been data saying that over 331,000 visits, 16,000 of those were adults. 324 of those people had attempted, and 37 had died. Look at the facts. Look at the statistics. Of these 72% of these attempts, 50% of those deaths occur in 90 days after contact with the health system. So it also shows me that I think there needs to be a more continuance of care. Like after that person leaves a hospital, an ER room, maybe they were psychiatrically put on hold, a 5150, that there needs to be more care taken to what happens to that person after. Is there case management in place to make sure that that person follow up with resources? Or is it that, okay, they're checking out, bye. Here's a form, here's a paper with a list of, not even therapists, clinics you can go to for help. But I think watching this, segment of her podcast, it's just like, what are we doing, y'all? What are we doing? Is this really prevention? Is this breaking the stigma? Are we just plugging in mics irresponsibly for sponsorships, for deals? What about my audience? What about the care? Okay? We need to do better. We need to stop re-traumatizing our audiences. Not we, they, because I'm not doing it. Okay? We need to not be so quick to just plug in a mic. Let's do some research. Let's talk about what are some things that you want to sit on this couch and talk about. What's coming up for you? What do you feel safe enough to talk about? What do I have capacity for as a host, as a podcast host? Can I hold the space of your mental health needs and the things that you want to discuss? Because this was a life update and this is his real life. But I don't feel like hosts nowadays understand trauma-informed care, retriggering their audience, and the rate that suicide is going up post-pandemic. Because the world is on fire. But it's almost like that doesn't matter because I have a podcast. I have deals. I have sponsorships. But I think we need to be doing better. I think people love Marshall, looking at the comments. I think there are a lot of men who are going through the same thing. It's good that he's bringing awareness to, like, some of the people in the comments are saying that. And it's good to have these conversations. But I don't know, y'all. Maybe it's just me. I just feel like it's not really trauma-informed care. But we need to talk about it. I think Black men in general are having a lot of, mental health things, suffering in silence, smiling when they're really not happy, going through depression, going through anxiety. But because the world says you have to stay strong, you don't want to be feminized, that you keep it in. But we have to have more due diligence in the work that we're putting out there for the world, for the media, how we're using our media, how we're using our platforms, because this ain't it. This is not it. Okay? But I want to know your thoughts. What do you guys think about her platform? Is she using it correctly? I know she ain't a journalist, but damn, just unplug the mic sometime. Don't be so quick to just plug in and have someone sit on your couch. All right. But let me know your thoughts. We need to talk more about suicide. So suicide prevention, the rates are ever increasing. We got to talk about it, y'all. Talking about it will not increase the rates to go up. It'll only have people speak up more about their experience, be more transparent, because suicide is the 11th cause of death in the US. Okay? Certain populations, American Indians, people living in Alaska, not far from where he lived in Seattle, have higher rates of suicide than any other racial ethnic group. So that means people who are indigenous, who are BIPOC, are suffering in silence. Okay, I just want better. But let me know, do I have too high expectations? Okay, let me know your thoughts, because of course we can get into it. Make sure you tap in, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.